Well, thank you for having me.
Well, of course, you come to life with a big Kennedy name, so you already have that sort of emblazoned on your back. But I was kind of curious, as when you started in your early years back in the 90s, you just started as an intern. So, kudos to you for perhaps not using that Kennedy name, but you started as an intern working with other documentary filmmakers. So my first question is, did you always intend to be a documentary filmmaker, or were you open to Hollywood blockbusters as well?
Well, I really love documentaries. I had graduated from college in 1991, and I had done my final paper on women and substance abuse and the difficulties they have trying to get drug and alcohol treatment, and felt that, in talking to the women who have had these experiences, that what I was hearing firsthand from them was very different than what I was seeing in the mainstream media, images of crack moms having crack babies. And what I found is that a lot of these women were trying to get drug and alcohol treatment, but were turned away because they were pregnant. And a lot of programs wouldn't accept them. And so I thought that, if I could give them a microphone and a camera to tell their own stories, that you could enlighten people and hopefully change policies so that they were more effective and impactful and helped everybody overall. And so that was the first documentary I made, was Women of Substance, and I really fell in love with making documentaries and have had a passion for it ever since, and have been making them now for about 20 years. So I think that's really where my passion comes from, is kind of doing those types of social issue films more than Hollywood films per se, although I would be open to doing, a dramatic film at someday in my life. But, right now I really enjoy making documentaries.
And when looking at subjects, Rory, it seems you've been really across the board from, AIDS or women's issues, as you've just mentioned, inequality on many levels, whether that be the class system in America or abuses of power in places like Abu Ghraib. So what issues kind of spark for you, and what motivates you on a daily basis to sort of come up with your next topic?
Well, I can't say that there's a precise formula for how I come across these various films and subject matters, and I would say that one thing seems consistent, which is that usually for some of my best films, I think that the intention going in and what I imagine making is very different than what I end up with at the end of my edit and the experience actually going to production with a film. So I think it's important always to be open-minded and flexible, but in terms of subject matter, sometimes, I'll be doing a film and I'll meet somebody and I'll think that would make another interesting documentary. I might read an article. I might, sometimes, broadcasters come to me and assign me pieces. Often I have a great relationship with HBO, and so I may go in there after finishing a film and say, here are 3 or 4, 5 ideas that I'm excited about, and they'll say, we like this idea, and so it'll be determined a little bit by the funder and the distributor and kind of what they're interested in within the framework of kind of what I'm excited and passionate about. So it really depends. In each project is very different and has its own story.
There's a quote from your father, Robert Kennedy, where he says something like, he knows that 90% of the talk is done by men, 90% of the work is done by women. So do you think that you, as a woman filmmaker, bring a different perspective to some subjects?
Well, I do think that, women's experience in this world is often different from men, so I think that can have an effect on how we view the world, and I certainly think, it impacts who I am and my vision of things in a certain way. I don't think it's a hugely determining factor, although if you look back on my work, I would say that there is certainly been a focus on women or women's issues, even if it's a social issue that kind of transcends gender, I might bring kind of that voice to it in a way that, and that perspective more at the forefront than maybe somebody else would.
And considering the many topics that you've covered in your career as a filmmaker, is there one that you're particularly proud of, or a topic that especially moved you, or one maybe that you thought made a bigger and more important impact than others?
Well, I think the film and films that I've done about AIDS over the years and the pandemic facing AIDS, and it came out, and I did one prior to that, really came out at a time where nobody was really focusing on that issue in this country, and that we were able to show it on Capitol Hill. And this was back in like 1998, 99, and it really felt like it was opening eyes and bringing attention to a subject that people really had no awareness of. I remember showing it on Capitol Hill, and Senator Leahy saying, I'm going to put an extra $25 million in the budget after watching this film, and really feeling like he had very little exposure to those issues prior to seeing the film. And so, I think when you kind of see that kind of impact, it's rewarding in a kind of way that is harder to maybe even compute for some of the other films. I think the Ghost of Abu Ghraib film also came out at a time where, there wasn't full awareness of the role that the George Bush and people in the administration played and contributed to what happened on the ground at Abu Ghraib. And again, I think there's a lot more awareness now, but at the time it felt, like it was breaking through into an arena that people hadn't really understood or appreciated to the level that they did after watching the film. And so, those, and the latest film I've done about my mother, Paul Kennedy, has its own, is obviously very personal to me, and so that has been its own special experience, and it's sort of a treat for me to be able to bring that one out into the world.
My guest is Rory Kennedy, and we're talking about her life and work as a documentary filmmaker, and she will be the featured speaker at American Conversations on October the 4th, 6 o'clock up at Peninsula College. And tickets still available, 417-6535 for more information. And Rory, talking about Ethel, your latest film, your mother hadn't given an interview in many years, and likely only did this one because it was you asking. But what made you want to turn the spotlight on your family now, on your mother?
Well, honestly, that is a project that, as I had mentioned, I've done a lot of work with HBO over the years, and they have asked me to do various documentaries about my family, which I've always said no to and resisted. And, then Sheila Nevins, who runs the documentary department, was pretty insistent and persistent in getting me to do a documentary about my mother, and I kept saying no, no, no. And then I figured, and she kept saying, come on, come on, come on, and I figured, well, I'll just ask my mother. She'll say no. She's not like doing interviews. She hasn't done one, as you said, in many decades, and even then, certainly didn't kind of cover her whole life. And anyway, so I called her up and asked her, and she said yes. And so I was a little bit taken aback, but in retrospect, very happy that she was game and happy that I made this film.
And in making this film, Ethel, did it give you insights into your father, who you never met, and maybe into the relationship between your mother and your father?
Well, I certainly think that I learned a lot in making this film. The film is really focused on my mother, but it was fun to be able to watch all this, great home movies and go through photographs, none of which have ever been seen by, the public before, and many of which, even when inside our family, we haven't seen. So it was great to be able to kind of review all of that and go through it, and you certainly, gain some perspective and experience in doing that, I think, and which was very valuable to me. But I think also, I went into it with a huge appreciation of my mother and who she is and what she's lived through. But think in being able to sit down with her over 5 days and ask her every question I've ever wanted to ask, and not only of her but also my siblings who are also interviewed in the film. Those are the only people in the film, so it's very much kind of a, inside portrait of my family and my mother and who she is and what she's lived through over the years. That I certainly learned a lot. I didn't know my mother used to bet on horses every day in college, for example. But there's some other, perhaps a little bit more profound insights as well. But it was a great experience.
And of course, it did do very well at Sundance, and it won the Special Achievement in Documentary Storytelling Award and also the Audience Award. So you can be rightfully proud, and I think it should be on everybody's list to take a look at Ethel. It's a great movie, or great documentary. Rory, looking ahead to October the 4th, when you will be the featured speaker at American Conversations up at Peninsula College, how are you going to approach that evening and your talk?
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited to come to the college. I think that what I'm going to do is do some, share some clips from various films, and many of which we've discussed today, and talk about my experience in making those films and kind of what the challenges were and what I learned from those experiences, and hopefully also in sharing those clips help people understand some of these issues in a bit of a deeper way. And I hope there's an opportunity for questions and answers, although I don't know the format exactly, because I love to, hear what people think and what their responses are and have a little back and forth.
Okay, well, we're certainly looking forward to that. And then looking down the line for you, Rory, what's coming next for you in terms of a next film or documentary? I'm
developing a documentary right now for PBS about the final days of Vietnam.
Okay, well, that one will be interesting. And, of course, because you're a Kennedy, I got to ask you this question. Any thought about politics for you, a move into the political world?
I would never write it off as a possibility, but right now I really enjoy making documentary films, and that's what I'm focused on, and it's exciting. My nephew, Joe Kennedy, is running for Congress, and he looks like he's got a really good shot at that in Massachusetts, and it's fun for me to get behind his campaign and really support him and other candidates who I think can really make a difference. Okay, well, we're going to be looking down the years for great things from you in whatever field you end up in, or whether you remain in the documentary or wherever you go. But we're also looking forward to having you here in Port Angeles once again. Thank you. I'm really excited to come up there, and I hope to get to meet you in person. Absolutely. I look forward to it as well. pcfoundation.ctc.edu for tickets, still available for the October 4th presentation by Rory Kennedy. It's a fundraiser for the Peninsula College Foundation, part of the American Conversation series. So I hope to see you there. And Rory Kennedy, it's been such a pleasure having you on Artbeat with you. Thank you for joining me. Nice chatting with you. Stay with me, though. We'll be right back.
If you've been wondering how much Just For You from Safeway can save you, look at it this way. Our weekly club card prices are really low, but when you combine them with digital coupons on Just For You, the prices get incredibly low. Right now, perfect example. With your club card, you can get a 10.5-ounce box of Kellogg's Frosted Flakes